Namaskaram, everyone, and welcome to the Awakened Soul podcast, a place where we integrate ancient yogic wisdom into modern living to help ease your spiritual awakening journey. I'm your co host and spiritual seeker, Dr. Crystal Asong.
I'm your co-host Dennis DeVos, also a spiritual teacher.
Hello, Dennis. Very nice to see you
Blessed
again.
morning.
It's
Very
been a
nice to
while.
see you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great morning. So, today we have another thought provoking, also rather sensitive topic that we'll be talking about, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like a trend, right? This topic, because if you go on social media, a lot of people are talking about it. People are raising their voices on this issue, and there are many campaigns that are, being done to raise awareness about this particular topic, and that is mental health.
Wow.
Yeah, which includes mental health struggles as well as mental health illness or mental health disorder, right? Let me just start off with this. Nowhere in the history of humanity have we experienced the level of comfort and convenience that we have right now.
Yep.
However, we still cannot claim to be the most joyful, peaceful, and loving generation,
Far from it.
right? Very far from it, right? And it shows in statistics. For example, according to the National Health Morbidity Survey in 2023, they did a survey and it showed that in Malaysia,
Right.
about 4.6% of adults, Malaysian adults, which is 1 million Malaysian adults,
Okay.
experience depression.
Mm.
Yeah. And according to them, by 2030, major depressive disorder, MDD, will be the highest burden of disease in Malaysia.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's alarming.
Yeah, that is very alarming. And also, they did another survey in 2022 about suicide, and it showed that 1 in 8 teens, aged 13 to 17, have suicidal thoughts, and 1 in 10 have actually attempted suicide. Yeah, even the World Health Organization, WHO, mentioned that suicide will be the second leading cause of death
That's crazy,
in the
isn't
world. Yeah. I mean, it's really crazy, right? How we've come to this point in our time.
it? And the stats that you're sharing is just, focus on Malaysia. If you take the stats in, say, for example, America, I think it's going to look very different. What I've
Yeah.
heard, I may be wrong, but what I've heard, it's easily 40%. People are on some some spectrum of this mental health. 40% adults, right? So it's crazy, very
That is
crazy
almost
stats.
half, right?
You were saying 4.5% or so for Malaysians.
Only adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about easily close to 10x for Americans.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it just goes to show how dire the state of mental health in our society is currently right now. So I was wondering, in your opinion, right, Dennis, what do you think is the main culprit here? Like, what is the missing piece that we haven't yet figured out that is causing this?
I'll give you a short answer, right? I think we are working so much in the world, right? Doing different things, creating technologies, trying to find solutions for this, climate change, global warming, soil degradation. We're doing all sorts of things. I mean, not every one of us, but generally, the society at large, we're doing things in this world. But we're doing very little things to ourselves. We're paying very little attention to ourselves. I think that's the biggest culprit. That is to say, our attention, our resources, our energy, our focus, our just outlook in general, we're spending it on the outside. The proportion would be still less than 10% in comparison that we're spending on ourselves, who we are, how we feel, how we experience life within ourselves. We're really neglecting that. I think that's the biggest issue.
That's very interesting. So you're saying that we focus so much on our external or outwardly activities, right? Rather than focusing on the person behind those activities, which is ourselves.
You can put it that way. Absolutely. Yeah.
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 Is that one of the reasons why? Now let me just set the stage, right? The status quo currently in Malaysia. There have been many initiatives that has been done to tackle mental health issues. For example, like the government have set up this thing called Mentari Malaysia, to help to help in improving the outreach of people with mental health struggles and also assisting them in reintegrating into back into the society.
Mm.
We also have non-profit organizations, NGOs like MIASA, Mental Illness Awareness and Support Association, as well as Malaysian Mental Health Association, MMHA, which is becoming more and more apparent in the Malaysian mental health scene, especially in raising awareness, advocating about this issue, and also providing relevant services. But despite all of these initiatives, right, which is very good with all due respect, right, we've put in a lot of effort and even energy, time, and money in advocating for mental health. But I think you would agree that the progress is still very slow.
Mm.
People are still complaining or suffering from stress, burnout, depression, loneliness, anxiety,
Right.
right? The stigma of mental health, mental illness is still there as well.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah. If if you could change the situation, or for example, if you were the leader of the country,
You're
I was like,
putting pressure on me, eh?
yeah, if you were the minister or the leader of the country, or any person who with a voice, right, who can make a change
Right.
in the mental health scene in our country, what would you do? Because we've done so much,
Mm.
but despite of that, progress is still slow.
Mm.
So what is there more for us to do?
Right. So let's get this straight. All these initiatives, campaigns, support, movements, these are all very nice, in helping people who are definitely suffering from said illnesses, mental health illnesses. And you were using the word to reintegrate them back to society, to help them with their rehabilitation, to help them get back on their feet. And all this are great, right? With all due respect. But still, what we are doing at large, not just Malaysia, the world, what we're doing at large is we're tackling the symptoms. Okay.
Mm.
Now, if your question, which is putting me in the spotlight, right?
No pressure.
If
Yeah.
I'm in that position of change, of power, of authority, the first thing that we have to do is we have to introduce more than just programs, but we have to start somewhere, right? So I'll just use the word program, but it's way more. It's a whole, long term initiative. But we have to start from a program, something like maybe you're familiar, something like inner engineering, okay,
Mm.
by Sadhguru, but like a program like that, that is first obviously not for profit. Some money can be involved, but not for profit. A program, we have to introduce it at a very fundamental level to all, not just adults. So we can, tailor make the system, the program in such a way that it's for everyone, regardless, starting from children. Now, why I'm being so ambitious here? Because you're putting me on the spotlight. The
Mm.
point here is we have to start young, understanding what life is, what the mind is, who we are. Very simple level, nothing too, mystical or yogic about this, just on a very simplistic level. Because, see, to undo, I'm going to use this word, to undo the damage that has been done to ourselves or society at large, to undo the damage that has been, say, done for 20, 30 years. We're in our 30s right now. So,
Mm.
like this 30 years of what we call as generational, trauma, uh, of indoctrination, of this and that combined. I don't want to use too many words, but you get the point, right? Because of our education system, our belief system, our all sorts of influences upon the very nature of the mind. Now, to change this, right, to undo this, it takes a lot more effort. And all these initiatives that you spoke about, those are good, supportive, but they're just tackling the symptoms. They're not going to the root cause. Okay. And then if you ask me what's the root cause, then simply people are not aware of what this is, what their mind is. So it's like, for example, I know this is going to sound lame. You have the best vehicle. Okay, I do not know what's the best car in the market, but just think of a car, for example, and or spaceship if you want. Right, you have the best vehicle, but all you're doing with it is You say a car, right? All you're doing with it is you're moving with one wheel. You have three other wheels and a whole list of other functions undiscovered, but you're just using one tiny fraction of it. Now, even science agrees with this, right? Some schools of neuroscience says we're just using less than 10% of our mind, at least the potential of our minds. Less than 10%. So it's not very far from what I'm saying. I'm saying you're using one wheel out of four wheels, that's 25%. Still, I'm giving us some leeway here. The point is, if you have such a wonderful instrument called the mind, the human mind, which is undoubtedly the most evolved thing on this planet in comparison to other creatures and animals, you're only using a fraction of it. And even though you're using a fraction of it, that you cannot handle already, that you're already making a mess out of it, right? So I think we have to start at this level, and of course, to introduce a program based on this understanding to all uh, you know all levels of societies. So starting from children, yeah. Who says children? First of all, there's this misconception going on that a child cannot meditate.
Mm.
Some parents were telling me this those days when I was running programs for children, enrichment programs. They were telling me, "Oh, my child cannot meditate. Meditation is for adult." I said, show me which adult can meditate properly. you know
Yeah,
a
quite
child
true.
can meditate so much better naturally, given the same little bit of instructions and training and practice. A child can meditate so much better than any adult
Mm.
generally. Why? Because they're still in the process of development. They have not been fixated, right? uh, by, again, like I said, brainwashing, indoctrination, belief systems, this and that. They're still very much in the process of growing, right? And so we have to introduce that
Mm.
to all levels of society, starting from children.
Mm.
That has to happen.
Before we get into the how can we increase awareness as well as work on ourselves, right, inwardly? I'm intrigued by the statement that you said. We focus on the symptom. Like currently, the initiatives, programs, campaigns that uh, many are advocating currently is focused on the symptom rather than the root cause. So in this case, what are the symptoms?
So you've been to like a or you've at least read or heard people going to like a therapist. With all due respect, they're wonderful, right? Psychologists, therapists, this counselors. But what they do fundamentally, right? I'm generalizing, but to bring out this point, they're working with your symptoms. How do you feel? Are you feeling stressed? Why are you feeling stressed? Then they try to, of course, do some digging, some groundwork, some fact check, or background check. And then once they establish a baseline or why you're feeling such and such, it's because you've been thinking about this. And they're not wrong, right? But they follow certain theories, certain schools of psychoanalysis, and whatever they have learned. The point is, it's still very much symptomatic kind of therapy.
Mm.
Okay. Or you're having this kind of disturbing thought. Let's work on this thought. All right. Or you, because you haven't, they may use the right words, right? Or you haven't let go of this incident. You're still holding on to this, let go of this incident. That's fine. But my point is, it's still working on a very surface level. It's helpful initially, but it's still very much surface.
Yeah.
There's not enough depth. Now, what is this depth I'm talking about? You have to go behind, beyond the mind. To treat mental health, okay, you have to go behind the mind. If you want to, let's say, you want to edit a video, you have to go behind the video. If you get what I mean. Of course, with technologies, you can do that, right? With your apps, you can do that. If you want to change the certain aspects of a movie, then you have to go behind the screen, behind the movie like this. So like this, you have to go behind the mind. This is a bit spiritual, yeah? So what we're doing is we're still tackling the symptoms, or we're tackling stress. Then we're introducing what? In the corporate world, it's very, very famous, very big thing, right? It's a
Stress
billion
management.
dollar industry. Stress management. or because productivity is not good enough. Okay, to top it off, right? People are already experiencing stress and burnout and whatever else you have shared earlier. Now we introduce time management.
Mm.
I just want to poke fun at this, right? Can you speed up time?
No.
Can you slow down time? For yourself, not for the world. For yourself, can you slow down time? Can you speed up time?
No.
I mean, you can do things in some
It
regards,
feels
in
like
some ways that feels like, wow, time
like
is so slow.
yeah.
I mean, it's no brainer. This is simple science, right? When you don't enjoy doing something, it feels so slow. When you enjoy doing something, it feels so fast,
Yeah.
right? When you enjoy spending time with somebody, in a blink of an eye, it's a day already. In a blink of an eye, it's a year already. In a blink of an eye, it's a lifetime already. Okay, so the experience of time is different for everybody, but the pace of time, as time is, how time flows, the motion of time is the same for everyone, regardless. It does not discriminate, right? This is one aspect. So I'm just saying, you cannot control time. You cannot speed up time. You cannot. So how do you think you can manage time?
Mm.
Time management. I'm poking fun at this, right? So, what you can manage is yourself, specifically your energies and your experience of life. These are the two things, two dimensions that you can manage: your experience of life and your own energies, which is, of course, another topic by itself. But the point is, people trying to manage stress, they're again, like how I poke fun at time management, they're just playing around with things.
As if stress is a default, right? Like it's something that you just have to accept, and now you have to learn to manage it in a way.
So
It's crazy, right? When you
right.
think of it that
No,
way.
you're gonna live with it for the rest of your life, or at least for the rest of your tenure with the company,
Yeah.
for the next 15, 20 years, however long you choose to stay with us. Now we're gonna teach you ways to cope with
Yeah.
stress. We're gonna activate your stress coping mechanisms. They put it
Mm.
in very nice ways. Then teach you how to breathe, teach you mindfulness, teach you not teach you. They get you into team building,
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah,
Some fun
definitely.
and games, and those are
Yeah.
fine. I have
Mm.
no beef with any of this, but they're missing the essence. It's not stress management that we need. It is self management.
Mm.
You can use the word emotional management, yes, mental management or mind management, but it is self management essentially. Your most precious resources. There are only four things. No matter how we look at it, there are only four things that you really truly have and you can manage and you must manage. One is your body, which is your physical health. The second one is your mind, which is your mental health, our topic today. The third one is your emotions, emotional health. And lastly, something that people are totally oblivious about, which is your energies, which is keeping you alive, your life force, your bioenergies, whatever you want to call it, your energies, which is your energetical health or vibrational health. So there are only four aspects that's within your purview of control, so as to speak. Most people are only working on one dimension, which is in some ways also, it's also lackluster, but they're working on their body, physical
Mm.
health. That's the only one they're aware
It's
of.
the most obvious
They
one.
go to the doctors, nutritionists, chiropractor, those things, right? But that's just one dimension of health. Mental health, which is very much related to emotional health, is another huge dimension that we have very much lost sight and lost touch.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that's the reality of us right now, right? Especially in the healthcare system. We treat the symptom rather than the root cause. For example, when I was working in the hospital, right, patient comes in with hypertension, we give them antihypertensive medication. Patient comes in with diabetes, we give them anti-diabetic medication. Patient has sleeping problems, we give them sleeping medication,
Mm.
right? But what is causing all of this problem in the first place is something that us doctors, we don't really tackle it, to be honest. But if you keep on doing this, then patients are going to come in the hospital again and again with the same problem, having to take the same medication for the entire life, and you're only treating the symptom. It's like putting a band-aid on an infected
Mm.
wound
Mm.
without knowing what causes the infection in the first place and treating that infection, right?
Right.
But sadly, because the healthcare system is just so burdened,
Yeah.
with patients. Even doctors are just very burned out and exhausted. They just have no time to help patients, untangle their inner problems, because that's what I realized. A lot of these chronic illnesses or medical conditions are not really physical, it's more psychological, right?
So this is gonna sound outrageous to the uninformed ear, untrained ear. What I'm about to say next, at least 80%. Okay, this is gonna sound wild. Let me preface this. About at least 80% of our physical illnesses, physiological issues within the body. You can name me a few if you can help me. Right, cancer. What else? Diabetes,
Heart attack,
cardiac.
stroke, autoimmune diseases, these
Thank
are the
you.
common ones, right? Hypertension, diabetes.
Thank you. Yes, you know your vocabulary is better. So at least 80% of said diseases, okay, that can happen to anyone really at this point, come from, yes, on a certain level, it comes from the food we, the environment we're exposed to, our lifestyle,
Yeah.
our sleep, all this, right? But on a deeper level, beyond physiological level, on a psychological level, of course, also on an energetical level, it comes from this neglect that is happening. Okay, in other words, I'm saying 80% of all these diseases and illnesses that we experience come from our own doing. At least 80%. Another 20% we can attribute that to the environment. For example, COVID, right?
Mm.
It's airborne. It's just not. I did not do anything. I just went out today and I caught something, right? So that is different, right? Food poisoning in some ways is different. Yeah, I just ordered food. I trusted the person. Okay, I'm saying that 80% is actually in your hands.
Yeah.
Your health. No, no matter what kind of diseases, generally 80%. In yoga, we look at it, your health is your doing. Simple as that. We say your health is your doing. Even though you say, I did not do anything and something just happened to me and I just got a tumor and I've been eating well, I don't smoke. And
Mm.
now, of course, we have a word for it later on. We use the word karma. But this is not the topic for that. But just know there's always a deeper root cause to it. Okay. Most of us are just tackling the system, the symptoms on the surface, but there's a deeper, usually subtler, something you're not paying attention to. It sounds far-fetched what I'm suggesting, but it could also be this, right? Because something happened to you when you were young, of course we call it trauma, okay, and you still have not found a way to heal it, to process it, to let go of it, to make peace with it, to come to terms with it totally within yourself. Okay, not announcing to the world, not writing a book about it, just within yourself. What trauma? Huh? I mean, this thing happened, and not does not mean I forgot about it, but it leaves no imprint. It leaves no, you know, no effects on me. I'm cool with it. I can talk about it if it's necessary, but nothing. That's not. I've nothing against it. Nothing. It has nothing against me anymore. Then you have totally healed from that said episode
Mm.
of trauma. Now that episode, for example, that what we call as traumatic episode, because people don't know how to process it, they don't even pay attention to it. It's seeping into the deeper aspects of their existence here, their life here, how they think, how they feel, how they relate to people. If there is some correlation back to that uh, traumatic episode, I'm just saying who they are right now is not. It's not that. It's not their own. They may say free will, but it's not that. It's been conditioned so much by at least one, if not more, traumatic episodes, and it's causing the body to believe that they are this kind of person. And over time, I know I'm finding the right words to put this
Mm.
in so that it does not sound too crazy. I'm suggesting that because of that one episode, it can be more, right? Definitely more, and they don't heal from it. It has caused them something 20 years later, 30 years later. It manifests into a different physical illness. Does that make sense? You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I hear you, Dennis. And I totally agree. right? All of these most of the medical conditions that people are suffering from, it's due to psychological problems or issues that they have experienced in the past, whether it's childhood trauma, abuse. Some people, unfortunately, they have experienced unfortunate events like sexual assault, being bullied, being abandoned or neglected by the
Yeah.
family. Yeah. But some people are not even aware that these traumas or even karmas and past dramas, right,
Mm,
are the ones that are causing the medical conditions or illnesses that they are experiencing right now.
right.
So
So that awareness is very important. You're right. Thanks for
yeah,
helping me paraphrase it so beautifully.
yeah. And
Uh,
how can one gain that awareness, and with that awareness transcend their
mm,
traumas and then heal?
mm. So, like, the first step is awareness, as we are discussing right now. If you do not know, then you cannot possibly heal or change or, become a different version of who you want to be. Of Now, the problem is this: when something happens, say we are having certain pain, okay? Um, I like to use the word tumor. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
Now there's a certain outgrowth coming up, and you're noticing because of the pain or the discomfort or just the sheer, size of something coming up. Then you get it checked, and certain diagnosis is done. I'm not gonna give it a proper name, and then like shit, what do I do now? Right? This thing is happening to me. It's happening to my body. The awareness that I'm speaking of is, this is gonna sound again crazy, but the first thing is, this is not happening to me. The first awareness, right? The first, at least, layer of awareness we're talking
The-
about. This is not happening to me. This is happening to my body. The distinction is awareness.
mm,
Knowing that, we always say, oh, I'm so hungry,
yeah.
or I'm sick, or I'm feeling under the weather. I mean, these are all social languages that we use, it's fine. But on a personal level, on an individual level, on an inward level, you should know clearly that I am not hungry. I am not sick. I am not feeling under the weather. Who is it? You have to be distinct and specific and precise. This is clarity. This is perception. The body is feeling it. The body is sick. The body is hungry. The body is feeling under the weather. This distinction is necessary for mental health, whatever we're talking about. Because one reason is we have mixed up, totally meshed everything up, and we just say, I am having this, I'm experiencing this, I am suffering from this.
Mm,
Because everything has become I. Now, what is I? I'm not trying to go totally spiritual. I'm just saying, what is I now? This I has become, um, for lack of word, this I is totally disease. It's
mm,
sick. It's very sick now, this I. I'm sad, I'm hungry, I'm sick, whatever negative adjectives that you
or
can
I'm a
think of.
depressed patient,
I'm
or
depressed, I'm this, I'm that.
mm,
So no, no, no. We have to see who is depressed. Let's just try this, right? I mean, people say this all the time. I'm stressed out. On
yeah.
a more severe scale. Then they say I'm depressed.
Mm,
Who is depressed? I'm speaking for that individual, whoever we're talking about. Right? Let's say Mary. Mary says she's depressed, but really, who is depressed?
it's Mary's emotion, or
So yeah, the, it's so clear. If with a little awareness, everyone can see this, right? So this is the fundamental awareness I'm talking about. The I am depressed. The I, you're just talking about the mind. So if I can even be more specific, the ego is depressed.
mm,
Now, if you can see this with awareness, with just a little, I won't even use the word detachment, some space between what is you and what is not you, between what is truly you and what is everything else. If you can see this is what we call awareness or clarity or perception, right? My mind, if you're speaking to yourself right here, my mind is feeling depressed. Very different than I am depressed
mm,
or my ego is depressed. It's very different. Can you see the difference?
yeah. But how does this shift in language or perspective help?
It's more than language. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
perspective, perception, right?
Mm.
And then it sips into your language, it sips into your how you look at something. It it makes a world of difference. So like you're driving a car, and your
Mm-hmm.
car broke down. It's unfortunate. It's a hassle, honestly. Okay, you have to deal with it, you have to work on it, you have to get some help, do what you need to. But you did not break down. Your car broke down.
Mm.
Can you see the difference between your car died on you and you died?
Yeah.
So people say the mind is like a smartphone. Okay, this is people's lingo. Truly is, but I think the smartphone is smarter.
Oh, really?
Okay, so it's like your smartphone died on you. All right, battery flat or whatever the cause, your smartphone died. But because you're so attached to your smartphone, now the problem is you think you're the smartphone. I know this is going to sound funny to some audiences, but
Mm.
no, really, this is what's happening to the world. You think you are the smartphone. In other words, you think you are the mind. So when the mind is sick, you don't be sick. Then you can help it. Then you can find appropriate help. Then you can, do whatever is necessary and within your capability and capacity to sort it out. That we can work out a plan in a bit. But the point is, at least step one, you are not the one. The mind is sick, the body is sick.
Mm.
We see how to deal with it. A lot of times, very by default, very naturally. And this is not a good thing. Yeah? When people are sick, when people are going through hardships, they're already going through something, right? They're adding more unnecessary uh, problems to the whole picture. Like you're already sick, not you, the body is already sick.
Mm.
Then you continue by adding the punctuations like I'm so sick, you know. I feel like I'm gonna die. I feel like shit. You are adding unnecessary burden onto something that is not real in the first place. I'm not saying
Mm.
your sickness is not real, but the way you look at it, the way it actually is not real.
So you're putting a almost a separation or a space between you and what is happening around you or what is happening to you.
It's not to you, it's to your body.
Mm.
Something that you own and you
Yeah.
have temporary ownership, right? Now, what you call as great as it is, right? What do you call as your mind? Is it permanent?
No.
You can train your mind all you want. You can reprogram your mind. You can have all the knowledge in the world. Fantastic. I applaud for you. But the point is, one day you have to let it go. It will go. With or without your permission, one day, once your time is up, along with the body, sometimes even before the body, we call that Alzheimer, we call that, amnesia. But let's not go there. Just as soon as the body expires, the mind will go. Simple as that. Okay? We have to make peace with that. So instead of waiting till the day where life takes you away, only you come to a little realization, a little too late as well, that, oh, my mind is actually not mine. It is temporarily yours. Make peace with that. Come to terms with that. So the quicker you have this, you develop this awareness that temporarily this body is mine, temporarily this mind is mine, and I have to work on it and with it. I have total responsibility over it, but it is not me.
Mm.
Once this awareness comes, honestly, there can be no mental health. Sure, the mind will still go through its struggles,
Yeah.
right? But you will not say, I am sick. You will not say, I'm depressed. You will not never again say, I am, what were you saying? Anxious,
Mm.
lonely, all these things. Now, you may experience those said emotions, you may experience them, but you are not defined and definitely not confined to them.
Mm. And it's also very empowering, right? When we say that, because we are not victimized by it. Rather than saying, I am depressed, we know that it doesn't define us. We are not. you know, being labeled or confined by that definition,
Mm.
by having that awareness, right?
Mm.
And that is my one qualm actually with the
Mm.
whole mental health movement. It's when we use our mental health diagnosis almost like a badge,
Oh,
like
that.
our identity,
Mm.
right? We say, oh, I'm diagnosed with, I'm not, with all due respect, not trying to make fun, but this is
Yeah.
just how it is right now. For example, a patient or someone is diagnosed with major depressive disorder. Oh, I'm patient with MDD, or I have bipolar disorder.
Right.
But because of their diagnosis, they tend to be defined by it. It
Mm.
becomes who they are, and
Mm.
they try to justify why they do what they do, why they are the way they are, based on a diagnosis that has been done by a doctor and written on a piece of paper. And it becomes their identity
Mm.
in a way,
Yeah.
right? And they carry this identity with them wherever they go and whatever they do. Or another thing is maybe the patient has been diagnosed and now successfully come out of it,
Mm.
managed to rise above that
Right.
mental illness, but then now they are advocating for mental illness as if it's a disease that they need to battle against, that they need to fight against, like
There are people
like
like
as
that
if,
as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
as if mental illness is the enemy,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
So what are your thoughts on this? And
Okay.
it's, again, it's still the mind, right, playing.
Not
It's
really like when you mentioned the word identity. Of course, you was giving her some examples. They wear this as a badge, maybe not of honor, but as a badge. Like, hey, I'm having this, or hey, I successfully battled this, but
mm,
still, this was me. And they may use some words. Okay, I don't know.
yeah.
Now the biggest thing is this: identity. So whatever you so identify as, you become that. And when I say you become it, your very way of being, your very way of looking at life, your very way of carrying yourself, your very entire existence, little do you know, subconsciously, revolve around that identity. Okay, I'm sure you have heard of this Professor Zimbardo in this famous prison experiment, Stanford University. Have you heard of it?
Sounds familiar.
In 1971, this professor, who is the chief of the psychological department, so he decided to run a prison experiment on the basement of Stanford University, the psychology campus, right? So what he did was he got 24 people in, okay, for the study, divided them into two groups. 12 of them will play the role of a guard, a prison guard, security personnel. The other 12 will play the role as the, what do you call, prisoners,
Mm.
right? So criminals. Now, supposedly, the experiment was scheduled for 2 weeks. That means, of course, they were appropriately compensated, paid, certain terms and conditions understood, and then they got into that, changed their uniform, changed their respective uniforms, and played the role. So that was the idea. But 6 days into it, so we're talking about 2 weeks, right? But 6 days into it, in fact, the first day itself, things already happened. Crazy stuff, which I'll share a bit, right? But 6 days into it, they have to call off the experiment. And not just that, not just the 6 days into it. Until today, this experiment, which is still talked about in psychology, in certain areas of study, it's still being banned, such an experiment. So what happened was, even the first day, right? The prison guards who played the role as prison guards, but they were just ordinary people, right? Randomly assigned. And the people who played the roles as prisoners, they became the roles that they played. They became the very
Mm.
identity, and they went in willingly with all this,
Consent and
consent and everything
yeah.
signed. They went in willingly. It's not like it just happened, right? They were left with no choice. They went. You could say they went in out of free will, but the moment they went in with that said identity, they became so confined. Really, I have no other words to describe this. So the prison guards became, even day one itself, they became very aggressive.
Mm.
Needless to say, they became dominant because, when people are put into certain positions, certain environment that supports that kind of, that kind of behavior, they became that very. uh, endorsement of authority, power, dominance, and of course, the only thing that luckily, that both parties agreed on is no physical violence, but all sorts of other violence happen. All sorts of other abuse happen, emotional, mental abuse. They would get the prisoners to do crazy, physical workouts as punishment. They would degrade and really just decimate them with very uh, very terrible words, like keep saying you are a criminal, and then they'll believe that they're a criminal. I mean, they're just playing their
Mm.
role so seriously, and then they don't call themselves by the name. The prison guards will talk to the prisoners by their badge number.
Mm.
They will have a uniform, right? So prisoner 5123. Then even the prisoner will identify themselves as that over time.
Yeah.
So the first day itself, someone had to quit. They had to call an ambulance in because someone was experiencing hysteria or paranoia. Okay, crying unstoppably and all these things, right? But next few days, again, a few more people quit, and 6 days into it, they had to call it off because it was that bad. Until today, this banned, this experiment. So
Mm.
it shows us that when people are put into certain environment, okay, conducive or otherwise, they become it, the identity. So in yoga, how we look at it is identity is the biggest threat to what we're talking about today, mental health.
Mm.
Identity is the biggest threat.
This is what you mean by ego, right? Ego is the
It is
identity.
identity. But even before we talk about ego as a whole, just simply, if you believe you are this, fill in the blanks, right? I'm a failure. This is an identity. Oh, you know what? I'm a millionaire. This is an identity. I'm a graduate. This is an identity. Oh, I'm nobody. This is also an identity. Okay, in
Mm.
people's experience, when they say I'm a nobody, this is also an identity. So whatever you believe to be true for yourself, we call this an identity. You're screwed. One way or the other, you're screwed because you're only going to act, carry yourself, look at life, do the things you do in accordance to that identity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'll give you one quick example. Say an orphan, okay, grew up without parents. Now, after a certain age, they've found certain success in the world. They hired a private investigator to find out their biological mother. Okay, this is real story, has happened before. Now, after some months, the private investigator finally found the mother. Okay,
Mm.
so they set up a meeting, met in a cafe, and our guy here, the orphan, was so nervous. Like, I'm finally gonna meet. I'm in my 30s now, and finally I'm gonna meet my mother. So a lady in her 60s, you can imagine, right? Walk into the room. As soon as she sat in front, adjacent to the person, to the orphan, our guy here started crying
Mm.
unstoppably, just sobbing. What has happened? Someone just sat in front of you, right? Nothing happened.
Mm.
Even before the exchange of words, teary eyes. Even even the private investigator who was outside arranging all this meetup and everything, right, was crying because like, oh, such a beautiful reunion.
Mm.
But I mean, it's based on a true story. But what I'm trying to say is, even before the fact check, even before the DNA test, even if with the DNA test, it does not change the fact that this lady who just sat in front of you, if you were to meet her on the street yesterday, you know, if she were to walk past you last week at the mall, it does not mean anything.
Yeah.
It does not make a dent in your life or anything. It does not. But because suddenly now there's context and there's an identity involved, that she is or could be my mother, my long lost mother. Now this lady is means the world to you suddenly. So this is identity. It's not good or bad. It's just identity, right?
Yeah.
So somebody that means nothing, that absolutely has no. correlation to you, suddenly because you add in a word, give it some context, which is the private investigation that has been done
Mm.
beforehand, the context, but just give it a word, she's my mother, or potentially she could be my long lost mother.
Yeah.
Suddenly everything changed. The whole emotional outlook that you have towards this person becomes so different. And that is how life should be looked at, because unconsciously, and of course subconsciously, we've been consumed by our identities. Whether they're good identities, bad identities, it does not change the fact that we have become our identities. And the moment you are identified as your identity or the role that you're playing, it's gone case.
Mm.
You're never, never going to find peace, truth, fulfillment, completion. And definitely, if you're talking about mental health, it's gone case because identity belongs in the mind.
Mm.
It can be real only to the extent of societal arrangements. That's the I'm not saying it's not real, but it's only real to the extent of the hierarchy, the roles you're playing, the
Yeah, in a
societal,
social context,
the
right?
social context only. You're right. But the
Mm.
moment the moment you believe that to be true, it's gone.
Yeah. So that's the first step. So becoming aware of and realizing that.
That's the second step. First step is being aware that you, whatever is happening, this sickness, this depression, this burnout, it's happening to, just if you can, just be aware. Is it happening to your body, or is it happening to your mind, or maybe it's happening to your
Mm.
heart? You can be precise about it. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm.
To be aware that it is not you. It is the body, the mind, the emotions, maybe the energies, right? That's the first step. The second step that we're talking about right now is the identities that you are playing in this world. It could be your job, could be your relationships. Okay, it's only relevant in the time and space in which you exist. It's only relevant to the society, to you know the societal context. It's only relevant. I'm not saying it's not real. It's real to that extent. But the moment you buy into it, you believe that you are it. It's gone case.
Mm.
Definitely. Can you get it?
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, are there any other steps?
we have a few more steps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you want to cover all of them or?
Okay, I can share a few more steps if so I call this the A B C D and E.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sounds interesting. A B C D and E of the mind. You have to you have to remove all these five things.
Mm.
Okay, I'll start with E because A is the most difficult. E is expectations.
Okay,
All right.
expectation. Removing expectations.
Yeah, and this is not too difficult on paper, but one expectation that people find it super hard to say overcome or transcend is the expectation of results. Okay. In the sense, if you're doing something, maybe a work, business, project, something, even relationship, people will think, what will happen to me at the end? What will I get from it? This is the expectation I'm talking about. Okay. This is the more difficult expectation that people cannot or find it hard to deal with. So this expectation has to go. What's in it for me? Okay, you can plan. I'm not saying you cannot plan. You can plan, but this expectation has to go. Now, D is discrimination. Now, this is not just a racial thing, not just a religious thing or belief thing. Discrimination in all aspects. I am better than you. This is discrimination, isn't it?
Mm.
Now,
Yeah.
it's not just an individual mental health thing that's happening. Okay. Of course, we understand that it's on the rise, but sooner or later, it's going to be a global thing, a collective thing. WHO, World Health Organization, is saying that in probably a few years, next few years, the next pandemic, okay, may not be a viral thing. It may be a mental health thing. And it's
Mm.
very hard to imagine how can a mental health thing be like that. So when I say discrimination, the world at large right now, so-called joy, not my version of joy, but so-called joy. People find joy by feeling and becoming better than someone else.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm feeling good because I won the race and you did not win the race.
Yeah.
Or I won the race against you. I mean, if it's a, like right
Yeah.
now, Olympic competition, I think that's fine. Okay, in that context. But day to day,
Yeah. Or I have
you,
more than you.
right? Oh,
Or
I'm driving a better car than my
yeah.
neighbor, right? Oh, I got higher score than my classmate. Whatever context,
Mm.
you feel like you're doing better. You feel good because you're doing better than someone else. That's toxic. That's discrimination. Okay. Now, C, conclusion. Conclusion sounds very passive. It sounds neutral. Nothing wrong about it. But the way the world is going around is they're just making conclusions about things that they don't know. Not just because they read it, some professor said it, some doctor said it, some scientist said it, and they believe it. So conclusion, don't make any conclusions about your life. No, some people may say, no, because I experience it. Like I'm just gonna quote a very stereotypical example. Just because they have, say, they met with a road accident, and the person who banged onto them was a female driver. This is just
I
contextual, yeah.
know where this is
Then
going.
they
Yeah.
say all female drivers are terrible.
Yeah.
This is conclusion. Now some people make conclusions about their own
Stereotypes.
lives, right? They're like, because I haven't been good with certain aspects of my life, maybe my last two relationships were terrible, it ended badly, I'm not meant for this.
Mm.
This is also a conclusion.
Yeah.
Any sort of conclusions that you make cannot be the truth. Even though, yes, you may have experienced it, it's still far from the truth.
Yeah.
Because conclusions mean you have put on a label for something. Okay, but you know the essence of life, it's ever changing.
Yeah.
How can you put a label, and the label is a fixed thing, and then try to match it with the
Mm.
ever changing nature of life?
Yeah.
So conclusion is very dangerous as well. Now we're getting to B. A and B, it's two of the most difficult things that you have to drop, right? If we're talking about mental health, to have a clarity and peace of mind, you have to drop A to E. Now B is beliefs.
Mm.
Now this is gonna
Yeah.
get on people's
This is a big
nerves.
one. Yeah.
All right, whatever that you believe, whether it's God, whether it's the Holy Spirit, whether it's this is it, whether it's heaven, even something as harmless as I believe in myself. Okay, whatever your beliefs are, you have to drop them.
Or even believing about how the world should be, how life should be, right? Rather than seeing reality as it is.
Because belief means essentially you don't have the audacity and the sincerity to admit that you do not know. Because if you do know, let's say, if you do know something to be true for yourself, may not be true for the world, for everyone else, but you know it to be true for yourself, like really, then where's the need to believe? Like, we know, a simple example, you have 10 fingers right now. You have 10
Mm.
fingers. Do you believe you have 10 fingers, or do you know you have 10 fingers?
Mm.
You know.
Yeah, we
Where's the
know.
need to believe once you know something to be true for yourself? But the way the world is going around is they just believe whatever nonsense they don't know because they find comfort. Belief can bring you comfort, it can bring you consolation, but it cannot bring you so called consciousness. So, belief is the opposition of truth. The opposition of truth is the opposition of consciousness. Okay. So B is very hard. Belief. Whether they are good beliefs. I believe I'm a good person. This is terrible. I will tell you. In the long run, in the short run, it's okay. It's gonna do you it's gonna give you some booster, right? I believe I'm a good person. I believe I'm a hardworking person. I believe I'm a kind person. It's gonna give you some comfort as well on in a short scale, right? But over time, if you just keep believing I'm a good person, I believe I'm a good person, see what will happen. What we call spiritual ego will happen.
Mm.
Okay. It's
Oh,
going to
this
be
is
terrible.
tricky. Yeah.
Another terrible thing in the long run. Now, A goes without saying, attachment.
Mm.
It's not just to things, not just to people. Things, people, especially ideas and concepts. Again, it has something to do with beliefs as well, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you're attached to, you cannot you cannot be really it, if you get what I mean.
Attach it as in you mean clinging on to it, or you're holding on to it and not not willing to let it go.
Two aspects of attachment. One is, as you mentioned, clinging. Okay, the possessiveness over something. Okay, clinging. The other is identification,
Mm,
especially with the ideas and concepts. The identification with something, as we were talking about it earlier,
yeah.
right? Because of said identity, I'm a mother, I'm a this, I'm a that. Even those naturally neutral ones, they will not do you any good in terms of spiritual growth, evolution, in terms of mental health, mental well-being. It will not do you any good because every time you get identified as something, again, attach and identification, they come hand in hand because you're attached to that identity, you see. So every time you get then identified as something that you are not, you are living with illusion, in illusion, with falsehood. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Over time, just a matter of time, certain conditions they meet. Once the conditions are in place and they meet, certain triggers happen and all hell will break loose.
Mm, yeah. Beautiful. Very insightful. So it's about removing all of these A, B, C, D, and E's, right?
Yeah.
So E, expectations. But let me just try to work on my memory, right? E, expectation. D, discrimination. C
Conclusion.
is conclusion, beliefs, and then attachment,
All right.
right?
These
Yeah.
things you work on it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. So we've come to the tail end of our conversation. I just have a few last questions that I want to ask because I'm very curious to know. Okay. First one, which I think is very relevant, especially in our Malaysian culture, right? We live in a country with a lot of culture, beliefs, ethnicity. People always associate mental health or mental illness with being possessed by a spirit.
Oh dear.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if this is the right
Are
stage
they
for it.
possessed by spirits, ghosts, demons?
Uh, okay, I'm gonna keep it brief.
Okay,
Okay,
make it brief, make it quick.
make
Yeah.
it brief. Yeah, it's possible, but most of the time that's not the case. It's possible. Okay. For now, I don't want to dive into the whole supernatural world and what you're asking. It'll get me into trouble for speaking too much into this, but it's possible. Certain energetical disturbance, okay, um, may cause may cause trouble to the mind, and of course, over time, then it becomes a certain mental health issue. It's possible. Mostly not the case. So-called demons, I'm just mirroring your words. Yeah, so-called demons. Most of the time, is our own imagination and our own making. Okay,
Mm,
is is there such a possibility of yes, but most of the time it's not.
mm,
It's just our own nonsense, pathological, psychological nonsense. Okay,
mm. Okay, interesting. Okay, one last quick question. Okay,
right.
mindfulness. Because there's a lot of talk about mindfulness these days, right? Mindfulness to help in stress management and the healing process, and people advocating of mindfulness practices like journaling, yoga, meditation. Is mindfulness the same as spirituality?
It can open one up into the path of spirituality, into the world of spirituality, into the possibility and potency of what spiritual process offers. It can open up, but that's not the goal. Mindfulness is not the goal. It can be the beginning, first few steps, yeah, but it's not the goal. If I have to talk about it in a spiritual sense, mindfulness is only going to help you in the first few steps initially, but afterwards, it's about unmindfulness,
Mm,
which
unmindfulness.
is totally unorthodox. It's not something people talk about because it does not sell. Mindfulness sells. Okay, it took a long time for society to progress to this part of the right where we are right now. That the word mindfulness actually sells. It means something. It could mean breathing. It could mean being present. It could mean doing, like you said, journaling and whatever else. But the whole point is to become unmindful, not mindful. Mindful is only initially useful. Unmindful means you are not the mind. Like
Mm,
people say, are you out of your mind? Like, yeah, for a spiritual person, the goal is to get there, to get out of your mind.
mm,
That's what I mean by unmindful. Okay, it's
yeah.
not a bad thing, but you cannot start with it. You have to start with mindfulness and move your way to unmindfulness.
Okay, beautiful.
All right,
Right, thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Janice. We've come to the end of our conversation. Okay,
So much to talk
so
about,
much
right?
to talk about, but I think we
Yeah.
just have to stop here, right? So thank you so much, and to everyone who's listening, let us know in the comments below in what way has this conversation been impactful to you. What are some of the key takeaways that you've taken, and what are some of the changes that you like to make in your life right now? And if you find this conversation or podcast episode valuable, be sure to share it with your friends, loved ones as well, so they may also receive the wisdom and insights that you've gained. And check us out at Awaken Soul Podcast. We're available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and wherever podcasts are available. Also, follow us on our social media platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Thank you, everyone, for listening, for tuning in, and for playing your part in this great tapestry of life. I've been your co host, Dr. Crystal Asong,
I'm the same old Dennis DeVos, spiritual teacher, co-host as well.
and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.